Welcome to the Nameless.
The footage ends abruptly, but someone keeps chanting after the screen goes black. That's the part I can't get out of my head. It's just audio at that point. No image, no movement, just a flat black screen and that low, steady voice repeating the same phrase over and over. Not louder, not panicked, just consistent. Like it didn't notice the camera had stopped recording. I've replayed it more times than I'll ever admit. Every time I expect it to cut off sooner than it does. It never does. I should explain how I got there. Back in 2019, I was part of a small online film group. Nothing professional, just 5 of us who liked exploring abandoned places and pretending we were making documentaries. Urban exploration mostly. Old factories, empty schools, that kind of thing. We'd post edited clips online and maybe get a few thousand views if we were lucky. It was harmless. At least it started that way. The 5 of us were me, Caleb, Martin, Joe, and Elise. Caleb was the one who found the places. He had this weird talent for digging up old property records and forgotten listings. Martin handled the camera gear. Joe edited. Elise mostly came along because she liked the vibe. About 2 months before everything happened, Caleb started talking about a group that used to meet in the woods about an hour outside town. He said they weren't exactly a cult, more like a fringe philosophy circle. That's what he called it. Apparently, they believed in some kind of physical transcendence, not spiritual, physical. They thought the body could be altered, conditioned into something that didn't decay. Immortality, basically. It sounded ridiculous. We joked about it at first, but Caleb kept bringing it up. He'd found an old message board archive connected to them, grainy photos of people in plain clothes standing in a circle in the woods. No symbols, no robes, just regular people. That almost made it creepier. According to Caleb, the group disbanded after one of their ritual attempts went wrong. 3 members went missing in a single night. No bodies found, no reports filed by families. They'd apparently cut ties with most people before joining. It felt like the perfect subject for one of our videos. We weren't planning on reenacting anything, just filming the site, telling the story, maybe dramatizing it a little. That was the plan. We drove out there on a Friday afternoon in late October. The air smelled like wet leaves and cold dirt. The trees were already mostly bare, and the sky had that dull gray color that makes everything feel flatter than it is. Caleb led us down a narrow trail that barely qualified as one. About 15 minutes in, we started seeing things that didn't belong. Small piles of stones arranged in rough circles, burn marks on the ground, old but deliberate, not from a campfire, more controlled than that. Then we found the clearing. It was wider than I expected, perfectly circular, like the trees had grown around it on purpose. The center of the clearing had a shallow depression, maybe 10 feet across. The soil there was darker. Martin started filming right away. At first, it felt like any other shoot. We set up some handheld lights, even though it wasn't fully dark yet. Joe did a few takes explaining the history Caleb had dug up. Elise walked the perimeter of the clearing, looking down like she expected to find something buried just under the surface. That's when she noticed the posts. They were short, maybe 2 feet high, arranged in a ring just inside the tree line. I hadn't seen them at first because they were almost the same color as the bark around them. There were 12. Each one had a thin groove carved into the top, like something had once rested there. We all kind of went quiet after that. Caleb tried to keep it light. He said maybe they held lanterns or something, but he wasn't joking the way he usually did. The sun went down faster than we expected. By the time we realized how dark it was getting, the woods around us had turned into a wall of black. Our lights suddenly felt too small. We decided to film a final segment, a simple recreation, just standing in the center of the clearing, describing what might have happened. It was supposed to be quick. Caleb suggested we stand roughly where the original members would have. 12 posts, 5 of us. We spaced ourselves evenly inside the ring. Martin set the camera on a tripod at the edge of the clearing, angled slightly downward. The red recording light blinked on. At first, nothing happened. We stood there talking quietly about how absurd the immortality idea was. Joe laughed at one point. The sound carried strangely, like it went up instead of out. Then the air changed. That's the only way I can describe it. It wasn't colder exactly, just heavier, like the pressure had shifted. Elise stopped talking mid-sentence. She was looking at the trees behind me. I turned around. There was nothing there. But the woods didn't feel empty anymore. I remember thinking that maybe someone else had come out there. Another group, watching us. Caleb said we should wrap it up. His voice sounded flatter than usual. That's when Martin said, "Do you hear that?" At first, I thought it was wind, a low, uneven sound moving through the trees, but it wasn't random. It had rhythm, a pattern. It was faint, almost buried under the natural sounds of the forest, but once I noticed it, I couldn't unhear it. It sounded like whispering, not from one direction, from all around us. Joe asked if it was some kind of animal. No one answered. The whispering didn't get louder, it just got clearer. It wasn't English, at least I don't think it was. It had a cadence to it, repetitive, structured. Elise stepped backward, closer to me. "We should go," she said. Caleb nodded, but he didn't move. The depression in the center of the clearing looked darker than before. I know that sounds stupid. It was already dark out, but the soil there seemed to swallow more light than the rest. Martin suddenly cursed under his breath, not loudly, just startled. The camera had tilted forward on its tripod. We hadn't touched it. He walked over to fix it. The whispering stopped, just like that. The silence that followed felt worse. Martin adjusted the camera and gave us a shaky thumbs up. "Still recording," he said. We started moving toward the trail. That's when Caleb froze. He was staring at one of the wooden posts near the tree line. I followed his gaze. Something was resting in the groove on top of it. A small, smooth stone. It hadn't been there before, I was sure of that. Then we noticed the others. Each of the 12 posts now held a stone, perfectly centered. No one had walked near them. Elise whispered, "That wasn't us." The whispering started again, but this time it wasn't coming from the trees. It was coming from the clearing, from the center. The depression in the ground looked deeper. Not physically, just visually, like it had depth that didn't match the surface. Caleb took a step toward it. I grabbed his arm. "Don't," I said. He looked at me like he hadn't heard. The whispering shifted into something more unified, less scattered, more like a chant. The pattern repeated in cycles, same phrase, same tone. Joe started crying quietly, not panicking, just overwhelmed. Martin backed away toward the trail, but he didn't leave. None of us did. And that's the part that bothers me most. We could have walked away. The chanting grew steadier. Caleb stepped into the depression. The ground didn't give under him. It wasn't mud. It was solid. He stood there, eyes unfocused. Then he started repeating the words. Not loudly, not dramatically, just continuing the pattern, like he'd picked up a line in a song. I felt something pull at my chest. Not physically, more like a pressure inside my ribs. Elise tried to drag Caleb back, but he didn't respond. Martin shouted at him. The chanting didn't stop. It layered, Caleb's voice over the whispering. Joe suddenly screamed his name. The camera fell. I remember the sound of it hitting the ground more than anything else, a dull crack against dirt. The image must have gone sideways. I don't remember deciding to run, but I remember trees rushing past me, branches catching my jacket. The chanting followed, not through the air, through my head. It matched my breathing, my footsteps. I don't know how long I ran. When I reached the car, only Martin was there. He was pale, shaking, staring back at the trail. We waited. No one else came out. The chanting had stopped. We drove back in silence. We told the police that Caleb, Joe, and Elise had gotten lost in the woods, that we'd separated. Search teams went out the next day. They found the clearing. No posts. No depression. No burn marks. Just trees and flat ground. The camera was recovered near the trail. It had recorded everything, up until the moment it fell. The last visual frame shows Caleb standing in the center of the clearing, mouth slightly open. Then it cuts to black, but the audio keeps going. You can hear Joe screaming. You can hear Martin shouting. You can hear me running. And underneath all of it, the chanting. It continues for 3 minutes and 12 seconds after the screen goes black. There are at least 4 distinct voices. One of them is Caleb's. One of them isn't. The other 2 don't match any of us. I've had the audio analyzed twice. Both times they said the extra voices were probably distortion, echo artifacts. But distortion doesn't breathe between phrases. It's been 6 years. No bodies were ever found. No evidence of another group. Martin refuses to talk about it. I moved out of state. Sometimes, late at night, I play the clip. I tell myself I'm looking for something rational. A clue that we imagined it, that stress filled in the gaps. But there's one detail I only noticed recently. In the final 30 seconds of audio, the chanting changes. The pattern shifts slightly, like someone new is leading it. The rhythm becomes steadier, confident. There are 5 layered voices now. I don't know when the 5th one joined. I don't recognize it, but it sounds exactly like me.